Welcome to Beer Untapped with Perry Miller, the podcast. I'm joined by Seth.
Hey, welcome, guys. Thanks for finding us on the internet.
Now, these shows originally aired on Brookings Radio, but now they're all here for your enjoyment. I hope you like it.
There you go. Sit back, enjoy the show, relax. Let us know if you want to see anything on future shows. As we said, this comes out live in the Brookings area, but enjoy this archive episode.
Beer Untapped with Perry Miller.
Welcome to Beer Untapped with Perry Miller. Did you know you could make two different beers from the same batch of grain? You can when the amount of grain being used is what's required to brew a Russian Imperial Stout.
British origin stout that was made extra strong for the Tsars of Russia because they liked it that way. Whether there's any historic accuracy to that or not, I don't know. But that's at least what we're going to perpetuate the story.
It's a stout on steroids.
Exactly. Our Pogonophilia is that. It is a big version of a stout. And it takes a fair amount of planning to do because it does consume a whole lot of grain. It usually pushes systems to the upper limits of what you can actually stuff in them. It takes twice as much grain and twice as many brew days as our regular stout for the same amount of beer. So effectively, it takes about 4 times the input to make the stout.
That's Seth Cook at Wooden Legs Brewing in Brookings. As we spoke, they were on day 2 of brewing Pogonophilia, their big Imperial Stout. Another difference with this batch of beer, it will actually become 2 very different beers, thanks to a technique called the Parti-gyle.
The Russian Imperial Stout that we brew is a bit different. We take that big rush of sugars, and we collect maybe about half of the total volume of liquid of what we could collect, and then we stop. And we boil that, so we effectively make half the amount of beer with twice the amount of ingredients. And the reason
it's really concentrated.
Exactly. So what ends up boiling is in some cases a near syrup style consistency, and that's what the Russian Imperial Stout is for, or any of the big Imperials. Is you really want this really thick consistency. The second part of the day, and that's what's cool. This is called a Parti-gyle technique, which means the sugars that still exist, although of lower concentration, are still sufficient for making a low ABV or at least even a modest ABV beer. We want to be able to capture those because they're still good. They're not going to be a stout, though. It's not going to have the same intensity of flavors. It's not going to have the same intensity of sugars. So what we'll do later in the day, after we've completely made the first batch of stout, is we will start the process again and use those same grains and make what is a brown ale now.
The Parti-gyle is not a new technique. It has likely been around for thousands of years, but is fairly uncommon these days.
Right, I would imagine this has been done for many generations, many generations of brewers. So that's what we do with our second batch. And what we call that beer we call that the bonus brown, which is effectively another beer from the same batch of grain.
More Beer Untapped is on the way. Welcome back to Beer Untapped with Perry Miller. We're talking about brewing Pogonophilia, the big Russian Imperial Stout at Wooden Legs Brewing, and the second beer that comes from the same grains using a technique called Parti-gyle. Here's Seth Cook on the differences between their Imperial Stout and its little brother brown ale.
It's going to be lighter in color, it's going to be lighter in ABV, and it's going to be lighter in sugars than the stout because the stout has already taken a lot of the color and a lot of the heavy sugars. But we will brew that, and then we'll ferment that right next to the stout. And the bonus brown usually comes out first because it's lighter and it finishes more quickly and it doesn't require the aging that the Imperial Stout does. And then the Imperial Stout, or the big brother of it, will come out a month or two later after it has completed its process. So, and people will often try it. It's fun to try it right next to each other, the Imperial Stout next to the Parti-gyle or next to the brown ale that has been made, because you'll be able to see the grain similarities. But to kind of differentiate the two beers, we make sure that the hop profiles are different. We make sure that the fermentation profiles are a little bit different of how they do. So you really do make two independent beers, related, but independent beers.
Seth says Imperial Stouts are difficult to make, but worth the effort.
For those of you that are out shopping for Imperials, or when you go to the store and you see these 750s or bombers that are $12, $15, $17, $25 for a bottle of beer, there's the reason for that. The reason is most often these beers have consumed a whole bunch of resources, a whole bunch of time, a whole bunch of energy, which is great, but they're deserving of the dedication and the time that the brewers have given to it. They usually take up a lot of tank space, a lot of cellar space, and they are done ceremonially. We like to do them Again, this is for our anniversary, or we probably won't come out by then, but it will come out this summer as we celebrate through.
Celebrating 5 years.
The 5 years into the start of the 6th year. So we don't do these as often, but we do enjoy the results. It's definitely a labor of love. So we'll probably put this version of Pogonophilia in bomber bottles again for some of you that had taken those away and stored those away, so you can do a comparison between the one from last year and this year's.
Look for Pogonophilia and Bonus Brown coming soon. Let's head to Brookings Liquor Store, check in with our beer guide, Drew Eklund. There is another new brewery delivering their beers to South Dakota, Uinta Brewing of Salt Lake City, Utah.
Uinta's initial launch includes 3 IPAs, a Saison, and an Apple Ale. They all come in 6-pack cans and retail for $9.99. Uinta's flagship beer, Hop Nosh IPA, is a big and bold West Coast style IPA that some might consider a double. Great IPA. And then they have 2 variants on the Hop Nosh, Hop Nosh Tangerine and Hop Nosh Grapefruit.
And don't forget to check out the lineup of draft beers for your growler fills at Brookings Liquor Store. Finally today, don't miss game night at Wooden Lakes Brewing. It's this Sunday.
We had the first one that was kind of a pilot, and it was wildly successful. People showed up and played every type of game. We're going to do that again. That's going to come up on Sunday from 4 to 9. We have some games here, and we're going to just have some games for people to play, but we actually encourage people to bring your games as well. Last time we did this, there was Ticket to Ride and Catan, and I think there might have been an Axis and Allies and Risk game that broke out. Some serious games going on. We have a couple of game masters that have come that will be willing to show instructions on games, and honestly, it's any game that you want. If you'd like to bring Uno, Apples to Apples, or you pick a game, come play. We've got the side room set up for it.
That's it for this week's show. Until next time, drink local and drink responsibly.
Thank you for listening to this archived edition of Beer Untapped with Perry Miller. Feel free to listen to other episodes, and if there's anything you'd like us to talk about on a future show, please let us know. Thanks again.